Every spring, the cherry blossoms returned to the old university campus, turning stone paths into rivers of pink and gold. Students moved through the courtyards in groups, laughing, running, living. But among them walked someone different, a quiet boy named Haruki, who kept his headphones in and his notebook pressed close to his chest, as though the words inside were the only thing keeping him anchored to the world around him. He had always been this way. Words came easier on paper than in conversation. He journaled before class, ate lunch alone by the fountain, and spent his evenings listening to music that said what he could not bring himself to say out loud. His classmates were not unkind, they simply did not notice him. And Haruki told himself, standing at the edge of every crowded room, that this was exactly how he preferred things. But April had other plans. On a warm morning when the blossoms were at their peak, a sudden gust swept through the campus path just as Haruki turned the corner. Without warning, the wind ripped the pages from his open notebook, his poems, his private thoughts, months of writing, and scattered them into the air like startled birds releasing all at once into the blue morning sky. He ran after them, arms outstretched, heart in his throat. One page flew higher than the rest, spinning above the heads of passing students, until a hand reached up from beneath the largest Sakura tree and plucked it cleanly from the air. A girl stood there, reading the words quietly, her long dark hair caught in the same breeze that had taken his poem. Then she looked up and smiled. Her name was Aoi. She had transferred from Kyoto just days ago and still carried the careful attention of someone exploring a new world for the first time. She returned his pages one by one, each handled with a gentleness that surprised him. But she held on to the last one a moment longer. "This one about the blossom that blooms when no one is watching," she said quietly. "I think I understand it." The next morning, Haruki arrived at the bench beneath their Sakura tree before the rest of the campus woke. The courtyard was still, birds just beginning to call, petals drifting softly onto the empty path. He told himself it was simply his usual spot. When Aoi appeared through the gate minutes later holding 2 cups of coffee, she showed no surprise at finding him there. She sat beside him and handed him one of the cups without a word. And just like that, it became their ritual. Every morning, Aoi with coffee, Haruki with his notebook. She listened with her eyes half closed as he read his newest poem aloud. When he finished, she waited before she spoke, and what she said was always honest, never flattering. He had shown his writing to people before, but no one had ever truly heard it the way she did, quietly and completely. They were different in ways that might have made them strangers. Aoi moved through the world with open curiosity, collecting impressions the way other people collected photographs. Haruki moved carefully, watching from the edges, afraid to disturb anything. "You are like someone who loves the ocean but will not go in," she told him once, laughing at herself as she said it. He did not respond. But that night he wrote 3 new poems, and every one of them was true. The sakura petals thinned and fell, and green leaves filled the branches above their bench. 2 months passed without either of them saying what was slowly becoming obvious. Haruki began to notice details he had not meant to, the way she held her cup with both hands, how her head tilted when she was truly listening, the particular stillness that settled over her when something moved her. He told himself he was only being observant. He was half lying. The news came on a warm June evening, after summer rain had turned the campus lights into soft, blurred halos. Haruki found Aoi at the bench long after dark, soaking wet, her umbrella abandoned on the ground beside her. She did not look up immediately. "My father had a stroke," she said at last, her voice even but her hands shaking. "I have to go back to Kyoto." A pause. "I do not know if I will be able to come back." He waited, because none of the first things that came to mind felt right. Then slowly, He took her hand in both of his. The rain continued quietly around them. "Then I will write to you," he said. "Every single day." She looked at him, really looked, the way she had looked at his poem that first morning under the tree. "You do not have to," she whispered. "I want to," he said simply. And he meant it completely. By morning, she was gone. The bench sat empty and wet, petals scattered across the seat. A folded note had been placed under a smooth stone at the center, one corner lifting gently in the early breeze. Haruki sat down and opened it slowly, as though it were something that asked to be handled with care. Inside, in always careful handwriting, "Your poems have made me believe in beautiful things again. Wait for me." He kept his promise from the very first day. The early letters were careful, each sentence chosen like the lines of a poem. By the second week they opened up, became more like conversations than compositions. He wrote about small things: the campus cat, the fountain, a rainy Tuesday when he bought her usual coffee by accident. Autumn turned the campus amber and red, and every evening without fail, another letter was sealed and sent north to Kyoto. December brought frost and a silence that stretched for weeks. Her last letter had spoken of her father's slow recovery and the gray Kyoto winter weighing heavily. No new ones arrived. Haruki kept writing anyway. He sat at his desk by the frosted window each evening, lamp burning against the long dark, writing not out of certainty, but out of the stubborn belief that something worth keeping was worth writing toward, even in the cold and the quiet. Then one January morning, 12 letters arrived at once, postmarked across different weeks, delayed somewhere along the route between Kyoto and here. In every one, Aoi had written back. She described the hospital at nighttime, rain on the ward windows, how she read his letters aloud to herself when the silence became too large to carry alone. The final letter ended simply, "I think about our bench every morning when I wake up. Keep writing." March came slowly. The Sakura branches began showing the very first pale buds, hesitant, small, like something quietly gathering the courage to begin again. Haruki noticed them on his walk to class and felt something ease in his chest that had been tight all winter. He brought a new poem to their bench that afternoon and sat alone, reading it to an empty seat. For the first time in months, the solitude felt like patience rather than absence. He was crossing the courtyard on an early April morning when he stopped. Beneath their sakura tree in full bloom, pink petals drifting in slow arcs through the morning air, stood Aoi. She was very still. One hand rested lightly on the back of the bench. Her other arm held something against her chest, a box, the kind meant for keeping things that matter. She had not seen him yet. The whole world seemed to hold its breath. She heard his footsteps and turned. Something broke open across her face, not quite joy, not quite sadness, but the expression of someone who has finally arrived somewhere they were afraid they might never reach. She held out the box. Inside were all his letters, every one, bound in stacks, barely fitting. "I kept every single one," she whispered. His throat closed. He had written one letter a day. She had saved them all. He walked toward her slowly, through petals that felt like something meant to mark the moment. She watched him come, eyes already full of light. When he reached her, he said nothing. There were no words left that were equal to this, and pulled her close. She pressed her face against his shoulder. Around them, the sakura bloomed in full unhurried glory, as though it had been patiently waiting all year, through every season, for exactly this. Some love stories begin with grand gestures, with declarations made beneath open skies. Theirs began with a stolen notebook page, 2 cups of coffee shared in silence, and the quiet discovery that some people enter your life and rearrange it completely simply by being exactly who they are. It survived 1 full year of ink and lamplight and 300 handwritten letters. And now, hand in hand beneath a sky full of petals, The quietest boy on campus walked forward into the life he had finally stopped being afraid to want.